not like arts-based research is this new phenomenon that has just emerged, but yet we're recapturing something that's ancient, and that these issues are appearing in our time, in our space, in this time period, because there are problems that the scientific method, and there are problems in our world that we are now facing, that perhaps something new is emerging to help us solve these problems. And that we were talking about just on an institutional level, how immersive it is, this dichotomy between art and science and subjective, objective, and that institutions, where we're going and the importance of these discussions are in terms of solving or discovering or helping the major social issues that we're facing in our world. It's really challenging. I know for myself, that we're beginning to move away from binary thinking, and Matthew's presentation really enhanced that for me about how we've been, in this capitalist market, have been conditioned for a long time to be thinking in binaries, and I know that for some people in our society, that challenge is very hard. It shakes them to their identity and to their core. And so, the arts is playing a special role in this moment in time, and I would like to thank all the presenters and all the speakers for bringing, from all these different perspectives, something that we share here, which is really finding creative new ways to answer the problems of today and the future. So with that in mind, all of our speakers are here and you are here, and let's have some questions or some thoughts from any of the speakers or just in general. Sure. There's a couple of seats. I don't know if we have any. I wish I had more seats. Yeah. That's pretty scary.
You can just walk back on the board.
How many arts-based researchers does it take?
Blue. The answer is blue.
Okay, anybody have anything they want to ask of our speakers? Yeah, and please state your name and where you're from and what discipline you're coming to us from.
So I have actually two questions. My name is Becca. I graduated from Berklee College of Music up in Boston. I'm a music therapist. I work at a high school for teenagers with private school behavioral, psychological, social, emotional needs, and substance abuse issues. So my first question is, I guess anyone can speak to this, but Diane, you mentioned something at the end that I think probably a lot of us related to with stigma amongst people suffering from addiction or mental health issues. And one of the things that I hear, I'd say almost every week from one of my students, at least one, is shame, especially because a lot of our kids have family conflict, and I'm going to use a word that a couple of my students have used. They feel like some of their friends are in public school around the neighborhood, and they come to this school because they have specific needs that can't be met in public school. So they, get very angry about either their condition, whether it's mental health or substance abuse issues, and kind of have like a self-hating, like the quote they usually say is like, "This is retard school," like all my friends and family, and it's not, we're catering to their needs. They need to be here. So could you speak to maybe how to encourage, specifically youth dealing with mental health or substance abuse issues, to like encourage them that this is, their process and they're just doing things, I guess, differently, but not in a negative way? That's just been a struggle, I guess, for me.
I think It's a hard question, but I think through the arts, I mean, having them make something together or create their own songs or put a, I mean, I used to hate having a show and I thought that, oh God, you know, but actually when I worked with emotionally the kids, I worked with foster kids for a while, and they actually turned out that they loved doing a show at the end of the year, and someone would say, I don't want to do that, and then they'd see people getting applause, and then they'd run upstairs and get the music book and come down, and they'd want to sing something. And it went on as a tradition, and then some of them that couldn't sing said, well, I said, well, you could be a great hostess, you know, like on the Academy Awards, you could come on. So they all found something that made them feel really special, and that helped a lot with their self-esteem and seeing that, hey, you know, I'm cool too, I can sing this song, and some of them can really sing. So that's one thing that really, really helped them.
Yeah, can we talk about arts-based research and its role in stigma?
Arts-based research.
Yeah, oh no, that's what we're talking about, artistic practice and challenging stigma.
I was just going to mention a couple of dissertations that have been done at Lesley University. One was by Miriam Savage. She worked with adolescents in California and has done a lot of doing infomercials of them where they get interviewed and talk about their strengths. So that's one dissertation. You can get all these from the Lesley website. The other is Craig Hain, who is a drama therapist and who did groups with adolescent boys, I think, doing acting and things as also as a way to deal with stigma.
So I'm not in arts therapy, but you know, I've been an art teacher for some time, in elementary school, and now I'm working with in higher education. So just in terms of the theme, the refrain I mentioned when I was talking, the idea of organizing what we know so that we can grow, just to play with that just a little bit. One of the things that the arts allow us to do is also to reorganize, to reinterpret identity. You can reorganize what you know so that you can grow, especially if you come into the roadblock of stigma or injury, right? And something I've written about quite a bit in terms of the notion of identity and the arts as a tool for that kind of reframing, reinterpretation. So once again, if we enlarge that definition of what we think the arts can do, and I've done this kind of work, identity projects with elementary schoolers and with higher folks who are, you know, adults. It all does the same thing. There's this notion of agency, which has to do with the ability to decode and then recode in unexpected ways. And it's a different kind of definition of agency, but it's an important one that grows out of the kinds of activities that we do in the arts in all the different modes and modalities.
Becky?
Just to add a little bit onto that, because that's in line with what I was also going to say, and just to build on that, it's the notion and the idea of being witness, and how we can transfer the artistic form from a clinical setting. So I know when Diane said, you know, used to hate performances, used to work with adolescents, and we were always like, I'm a clinician, and we were always so asked to do the performances. But it's actually, you know, when we reshape and redefine what it is that we do from an arts-based perspective, and we look at the role of audience as witness, and we redefine that space. In drama therapy and in acting, we talk a lot about that, our colleagues. So if we think about that in that lens, it also helps us ground the work that we're doing to support particularly that age group and that developmental stage and the group development. And it's about the relationships, the compassion, the co-suffering, and the witness thereof.
I was just going to ask or add, you can also have your students reframe what I am not, and do artwork about that, and that sort of gives them kind of control or agency or empowers them.
Yes, Brian?
I'll stand. I came here to DuPont to major in music therapy over 21 years ago. And when I came, this program was a very different one. It was very behaviorally oriented. I really appreciate my mentors. You know, Robert and Mary were terrific. But I'd like to come back and major in this program. That's really, it's a little late, but I mean, and have all of you be my teachers. Truly, this to me, it feels like, to me, the center of the music therapy paradigm universe. It's right here. This is what it's about. This is the heart of it. And I think it's so important, and what each of you are doing, pioneers, is so important. And the thing that really stands out to me, that runs, kind of feels like it runs in common, is this idea that as you're doing research in this context, you're not studying people like they're things, like they're objects. They're agents, and you are stakeholders in a larger purpose with them. So even by doing arts-based research, you're engaging in an activism already that's empowering. It's like doing therapy in the research. You're helping them to appropriate cultural and aesthetic capital, you know, from which they would normally be marginalized. That's what you're doing. And I think that nuance is still a nuance that's missed by way too many people. And so it's more a statement than a question, but I just want to express my appreciation for the courage to do that and for inspiring others to do it. And I want to do it a whole lot more. So thank you all.
Questions? Yes.
Hi there, my name is Caitlin. I went to Shenandoah University for music therapy, and I am currently working for a private practice in Albany for Expressive Journeys Music Therapy. My boss is right here, Erin Langdon. And so I work in the school setting and with children and adults with various disabilities, and my question is really broad, and anyone can take the question if they feel they have something they'd like to share. But my question is, why do you find that this arts-based research is so important, and who are you doing it for? Because I feel like I've gotten different answers to that from each of you. As this gentleman just mentioned, he gets a sense that you're really incorporating a great experience for your clients. From some of the presenters, I got the experience that this was a journey through yourself and your own practice. And in other senses, I feel that this is a practice to share with your colleagues. So who do you do this for, and why do you think it's so important?
Thank you. And good night, everybody.
You came from the left.
I think that's a great question. It's huge, like you said. My teacher said research is me-search. So there's certainly an element of self-discovery about yourself. And yes, it's for our colleagues, but as I said in mine, alcoholics have done that, at least one, I could do more, and they could gain from it. A variety of people, Al-Anon people could gain from it. Honestly, anyone can gain from it, because the traits that these characters have, I wanted to mention this and I forgot, two of the people in the show actually said each time they did it recursively, that one of them especially, she said that she started to realize more and more that it was like her, that she was like that character. So a lot of people related to these aspects and these wounds that they just happen to be alcoholics, but they're wounds that we all have wounds. We all have baggage. We all have, I talk about the wounded healer. I think it's for everybody that you can all benefit from this.
So I have to confess that up until 2 weeks ago, I had never even heard the term arts-based research. But my reason for initially being interested and agreeing, to speak here with Michael is a real pressing concern to expand my own practice as a teacher and as a maker and really sort of, I think, an ethical necessity to reconfigure these practices in the face of, massive environmental devastation, of, ongoing horrific campaigns of racism, classism, and sexism. And I think, to me, arts-based research, and from the examples that people have provided today, really provides some provocative examples of how to do that, that I'm particularly interested in. And when you asked who's it for, I think in some sense, yes, of course, for me, but also for a community of students and fellow researchers, and in a sense, a community that's yet to come, one that is being configured through this very action that we're currently taking, right? That is going to be radically inclusive in ways that we might not even yet understand it. And I feel like arts-based research can provide some of the tools to configure that new, just community.
So I have two thoughts that come to mind. One is that I am doing this to hopefully shape my field's discourse in its value and how it values our artistic knowing, and to get closer to that and to increase that value. And secondly, I want to transform and hope to be a part of transforming public understanding about the meaning and presence of anxiety in society. I feel, and my stance is, that it's a perpetual problem on many, many different levels, and I'm using my art form to get the word out there in as many ways as possible, and through that critical social perspective.
You want to add what, James?
So once again, great questions. So I'm really interested in things that are hidden in plain sight. One of those things being that the arts make us smarter. The idea that that there's more than one way to do research, right? And one of the things I've learned early working in elementary schools is that children love doing research. And the term research, or the idea, the institutionalization of the concept of research, or how research is supposed to be done, it marginalizes folks who research or re-see, look and investigate and examine, experiment in other ways than what has been institutionalized as being the way research is done. And that, to me, is problematic. So I think I approach this in terms of the stakeholders, sort of somewhat like street artists, in terms of the idea of removing that, taking the practice that is common to all of us, this impulse to create together collectively, and sort of revisiting it and as a tool for making us smarter, as it always has, right? As a tool for doing research, as it always has, right? For informing, as it always has, right? For forming new ideas, or transforming the status quo, as it always has. But we just don't see it because the power of the story of science and its methodologies. So I think I have a larger, once again, I tend to do big picture thinking. So who I speak to is sort of anybody who has learned and grown and reorganized who they were and reinterpreted life and circumstances through the arts, whatever those arts practices are.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, my name is Kathleen. I'm a music therapist. I practice in hospice in North Carolina. And I'm really curious about the concept of, Sean, what you were talking about this morning, of egalitarian, anybody having capacity to engage in art-based research, and also the horizontalization of trying to deprivilege certain epistemologies. And I'm just wondering if we can hear a little bit more about that and how that's done. And I'm having a hard time imagining what that could be. And how we get there.
Well,
What specifically do you mean by that, or egalitarian?
So how can anyone be an art-based researcher, and how can we not only do that in academia, but how can the common person engage in art-based research?
Well, you know, one of the things that I do want to answer, can I do one thing? Because I did want to say one thing about why do you do it. So events like this can happen. So you could say what you said about you read something by me and it helped you. I know that I very consciously, when I dropped out of law school in 1969, wanted to do something in service. And I think that what's happened to me in this work is that the things that disturb me the most are the greatest engines. The greatest engines. And there are huge disturbances about the way the arts were being treated in psychotherapy, the way the arts are being treated, just as I keep saying, just as data for some other, but you picked up on the academic corporate complex, things that disturb me. And disturbances are good. And they're a great engine, and they're a great activator for activists. And things just don't feel right. So I do it to hope, to dream that things like this happen today. And I'm just full of notes, and I've got a new thing, a new work just coming out of what all of you said to me. A lot of you, your remix and all of you. I mean, I'm a little staggered. Maybe that's why I'm a little quiet because I've taken it so much today. Now, about the egalitarian. Research is a conscious choice. Make a conscious choice, or we're given an assignment. But one of the things to answer that question is I can't give a simple one. Yes, I do believe anyone can do it. I do believe in egalitarian access to artistic expression. As the Buddhists say, start where you are. Do it your way, your most authentic way of moving or making sense. Yes, I believe that deeply with the right kind of teacher, supervisor. Yes, I'm convinced. But if you've got a little self-esteem issues of that part, you might need a little more coaching. But what I'm most struck about today around all of that, maybe it's partly an answer to your question, is the way people have been saying, I was doing it, but I didn't know I was doing it. That's one of the takeaways. You said it, and others have said it too. I was doing it, but I didn't know. Does that make sense? Huh? And I think people are doing it all the time.
I'd like to personally invite you to the CMTE at the AMTA conference that Mike Viega and I are doing because because we're going to be helping people sort of think about what kind of arts-based research project they may want to do. Because I think you can do it. I absolutely do think you can. And until we get clinicians in the field doing research that's really meaningful to clinicians in the field, we're not moving forward that quickly. And I really would love to see that kind of research. I'll give you my business card. I'll be happy to talk to you about ideas you have about doing research. I'm happy to give you feedback, just to support you in doing that, absolutely. And then just to your question of horizontalization, it's an ideal, but it's always for me about recognizing your biases when you're going in and trying to find them and thinking about them. And the way Diane was challenged by her advisor who said, well, if you think AA works, you're already biased. And to sort of, embrace them first, and then you can equalize them and privilege the things that you want to privilege. If you want to privilege the arts over the text, that's fine. But to recognize that you have those biases and to write them down, work with those for a while to get through them, and then move along. But I'm happy to give you my business card.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question about how to resist falling into sort of binary traps of, that we inherit through Western thinking. And I think, one way to do that, to provoke a really authentic methodology, is to start from a place of curiosity that takes you outside of yourself, right? That isn't about looking inward, but it's about joining with external phenomena and allowing them to move you and join with others. And I think that's where really creative paradigm shifts happen, from those complex, often multi-species joinings. I think of like the advent of skateboarding is a really good one, right? Which is a long and complex history, but it's a really great one because no one made skateboarding. It was just a bunch of kids that wanted to learn to surf, and there was a drought, and there was abandoned pools because the real estate prices were really low in California, and then there was new technologies that went from clay wheels to plastic rubber wheels, and then all these things came together at this moment. It wasn't a person saying, "I'm going to creatively make skateboarding." It was rather a bunch of non-human forces and then humans sort of joining with them that created a whole new way of being in the world. That's really, I think, really beautiful. There's a great movie on this called Dogtown and Sea Boys. So, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
I think about hip hop in the same way, how, from the environments of Trenchtown and the Bronx, from places that had very little political, social support. The Bronx was burning in 1977, yes. Suddenly some kids get on a playground and invent a culture. I mean, it's so amazing that, and from their perspective, it was ancient. For KRS-One, hip hop is ancient. It was about having these ways of expressing ourselves, to allow our voices to be heard. And so I created a way of drawing on these huge subway cars, and look, my name is going across all 5 boroughs. Wow, isn't that awesome? And now it's a font on my computer. It blows my mind that was all on a couple blocks in the Bronx, right? And so, I mean, it's quite an amazing thing what art can do to transform and shape.
And where did we ever get the notion that art isn't for everybody? Sorry to use the term art, but look, a child moving with a brush. Where did we ever get that notion? So everyone, television, it's just that it's not, and it's, that where do we get the notion that we know that art's good for you? It's the greatest medicine, but why is it that we don't do it? As a society, not just research. All this baggage, all these resistances around talent, skill.
Yes.
My friend Paolo, talks about, in order to open up this universal access, because that's what we try to do when we try to help others with the arts, we deal with the same question, not just research, but, oh, I can't do this. And I write about this in my new book, Imagination and Action, in terms of universal accessibility. If you can breathe, and if you can move, you can paint. Do you follow what I mean? And you can paint. Well, Paolo talks about low skill, high sensitivity. You can have high skill, low sensitivity. And I don't like to get too binary here, but polarist, dualistic, but do you follow what I mean? Just reframe the whole thing. Take it on.
Other thoughts? Yeah.
What struck me a lot was, and what we were talking about is the privilege of, which you talked about, Michelle, of science-based research and how the institutions and the systems in place support that and not support this. And I think that this arts-based research in itself, that it is in itself a form of activism because it's asking us to expand the way that we look at how we humans experience the world. There's not a binary, and that's why this work is important. And at the same time, as I am just starting my career, I would love to do this type of work. How do I do it when the systems and the institutions are supported?
Okay, good night, everybody.
That's leaning on the cutting edge.
Oh, I know, Natalie. I think it is an act of courage. But I wanted to say, when you were speaking too, to me it's play. And what fun to come home from it, you know, where I'm hearing about trauma and you know, just like put on some music and dance around the room, and then I get a melody in my head, and hey, what is that? And I start playing, and maybe I draw it, or, I mean, it can be so much fun, and then before you know it, maybe you come up with something that you want to share. I think the fun, and I also think what you're saying, the drive, like, I want to do something politically right now that isn't destructive. I really want to do something destructive. But, you know, that you could do something that could help with what's going on in the world right now, you know?
And in some ways, I think it's easy for us to talk about, oh, yeah, we can do it, because we all have a certain amount of privilege in the world, and I'm trying to be aware of the privilege I have and use it to privilege other things that aren't getting privileged. So I kind of see it as my responsibility to be an activist in arts-based research and try to get it out there and be at events like this and to talk about it, because I think if all of us are doing that, people are going to be listening to us because of the privilege that we carry. And so that's sort of our job, but we need people behind us who are going to pick it up and start to do it too, and who are going to be excited about it, because it has moved forward. Even in the last 10 years, I've seen tremendous growth and acceptance of arts-based research that the first time I mentioned it to somebody, they laughed, and now that's not happening anymore. So I think a lot of ground has been covered, and I think a lot more can be, and I think this group is working to ensure that that does happen.
So, one quick thing. The way I conceive of creativity is creative activity. And I can't tell you how many times I've had students introduced to me as being someone who's not very creative, that if you create the right activity, what one can do, another can do. I talk about it a lot in the book Swarm Intelligence. And it's that sense, you go back to, so I think Sean mentioned this idea of how we lose that, how does that get taken away from us, and school. There are some of you have heard that experiment where folks go into a school. I talk about it in the Swarm Intelligence book. I went to a school, work with kindergartens, they're working with all the grade levels, working with kindergartens and first graders. Who's creative? Who's here as an artist? Everybody's hands go up. They're working with each grade level. They decide to ask the same question to each grade level. By the time they get to 4th grade, only half the hands go up in the classroom. By the time they get to the 12th grade, only one hand sort of ekes up. I think I'm creative, right? So what's going on with that that miseducates folks in that particular system, which is huge, right? To think that that there's a group of folks who are creative and that they're not, right? What kind of activities are we assigning that takes away that sense of efficacy in terms of the ability that I can contribute to the development of an idea, as opposed to finding the answer in the back of the workbook, right? There are activities that we assign. We actually do this to ourselves, in terms of how we remove from ourselves, extract that sense of agency that we can participate and be in creative activity and grow, right? And help others to grow by doing so. Some of my favorite activities are, in terms of art class, of giving, as opposed to everybody doing their own thing, after I've made something, okay, now you go help the other person in there, and now you help, you work together, you collaborate, because that's what culture is, right? There's this grand collaboration. We just lose, once again, it's hidden in plain sight. We know this, but yet we can't see it because of the masks that our institutional practices put over us. So.
Becky had something to add.
Just very briefly, so I was thinking of an example of when I used to work in inpatient psychiatry for children and adolescents, and in terms of how to shape the environment, how to just get involved in this kind of work. And it was visiting time, and visiting time was always like an area of anxiety, and all of the staff, all of us would just be all freaking out and trying to problem solve. So maybe we should limit the amount of parents or caregivers are allowed to come in. And it's like, no. The reason why it is chaotic is because there's no anchoring, there's no art form, there's nothing around, there's nothing to really like nurture and contain or frame this random activity that really needs some kind of context. So I collaborated with a non-profit organisation that donated art to institutions, and they commissioned an artist to do a video. So it was a multimedia piece, silent, no music, but of a set piece with bunnies, real bunnies, just for a few of them. And everybody laughed at me at the time. They're like, oh, it's Becky and the Bunnies Project.
Sounds like a group.
Don't give me ideas. We've got a band here. So do you know what happened though? That turned into the biggest talking point in the whole hospital, because it was put on the wall in the room where people had where the families came for visiting. It works. And just the qualitative information that we got from that was everybody felt calm. And then the next piece was they started relating to their family dynamics with the bunnies, because there were like several bunnies, and one would come in and say hi to the other one, then come out again. And so we had this whole psychodynamic thing that was happening, engaging the families, engaging the children, and there wasn't one IM that day that needed, that in that visiting hour. So it can be done, and it just comes out of practice. Sean talked about this is practice-based work that we do, and it's just being connected with it, and being courageous and empowered to say this is the power, and trusting the process, trusting the practice. So go there, be courageous and just go for it, and don't listen to what people are socialized to think about what art should be and means. Just go for it and do it.
Wait, we have time maybe for one more quick question? Yeah.
It's not so much a question, it's a comment. First off, to thank everybody for what they shared, and I think for reminding us of arts as a way of knowing, and I'm walking away with the idea that we can know for the sake of knowing. And I feel like so often we get told what we should know. We only need to know this. We go to school to learn this so we can do that, and we don't need to know what's around it. But I think what you've shared here today reminds me that we're curious beings, and we live in a place that has this.
Yes.
Why should we just know that?
Yes.
So thank you for reminding us that it's okay to be curious and to use what we know to be curious.
It's more than
And to
okay.
use what we know to know.
It's the best thing.
It's
It's
necessary.
necessary to create, curiosity. It keeps you alive, too. It keeps you young.
Well, I think that is all for today. Thank you guys. Round of applause for you, the audience.